Hello and welcome to the Girls Fuel podcast. My name is Haley. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition coach here to help you along your health and fitness journey by providing evidence and experience-based knowledge and, as always, full transparency. That is a mouthful every time. Anyway, all right, guys, today I'm alone. Today is a solo episode and I'm so excited to chat with you about today's topic. So, we're going to talk about sleep issues, what makes sleep good. And I'm going to tell you about my journey with sleep because you might have heard me talk about this online before, or I might have told you if you opened up to me about your sleep, but I have literally struggled with every aspect of sleep, from struggling to fall asleep to stay asleep, or sleeping but still feeling completely dead and exhausted the next day. I have struggled with my sleep for my entire adult life and even like in my childhood, but I'm not necessarily going to take you back through that today. So, the thing is, poor sleep is our body's way of waving a red flag. And today we're going to uncover what those flags might mean for you and what you can do about it. So, goals here: get to the root cause of why your sleep sucks. I'm going to share some practical tips to improve sleep that not only helped me along my journey from healing chronic insomnia, but also those that I've learned along the way from my education and working with clients. And then we're also going to dive into some other additional factors in your day to day that might be impacting sleep. But let's start with breaking down a couple different key issues. So, two of the biggest sleep troubles that I hear people, or women, I should say, talking about is waking up feeling wired in the middle of the night and waking up and not feeling rested, not feeling like they got good sleep, even though, yeah, you were asleep for hours and hours. So, again, I've dealt with all of the above, every situation we're going to talk about. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about like how each phase has impacted me and what it ended up being in a minute, but kind of some backstory. So I was diagnosed with insomnia in 2019. However, long before that, my challenges started, and it was just one of those things that I normalized, right? I normalized being so wired before bed, my mind racing every night. I was like, oh, I'm busy, I'm stressed, I have a lot of different things going on. I was personal training, I was in school, I was building a business, whatever my excuse was at the time. I was like, oh, it's normal. Everybody has trouble falling asleep. Like I'm just wired up. I had too much coffee, which partially that was true, but I struggled to fall asleep. So naturally, which I never recommend doing, I took every single over-the-counter drug that I could think of to try to sleep. Advil PM I took for years, which later translates into all of my gut issues and all of that. In college, I did drink a lot of alcohol, and I know part of that was to have fun, obviously, like most college students do, but part of it was because my sleep was so bad that the only time I could knock myself out is if I was going to bed drunk. Not that I drank on school nights or anything like that. It definitely helped on the weekends. I also have some trauma related to sleep, which maybe I'll share in this one. Maybe I won't. Don't want to trauma dump on you. If you want to hear that one, I can share it offline. It's nothing too crazy and we'll get into it a little bit. But for years, from probably my junior year of college until grad school, which that was a, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 5 or 6 year period, because I took some time off after undergrad before grad school, where I was sleeping probably 3 to 5 hours a night. I would say five was a sweet spot where I felt somewhat human, but that is not normal. Like, I don't want to normalize that at all. That was not a way to live. And I felt it, right? Every single day, I was this super not fun mix of anxious, strung out on caffeine, exhausted, can't like concentrate on anything. Grades slipped at certain points. I wasn't hearing my friends. I wasn't present. I was overdoing caffeine. I already said that, but that was like a big highlight there. I was drinking a shit ton of caffeine. And when it was time to go to bed, I was fucking wired. Couldn't fall asleep wired. So again, Advil PM, NyQuil, ZQuil. I would buy whatever cortisol supplement I saw online or whatever it was. And there's a lot more of that now than there was in 2015. The ads on Facebook, do those ever get you? Because if that was around while I was struggling with this, oh my God, I would have spent hundreds of dollars on that. And as time went on, internet evolved and there was more marketing. So I tried every supplement that was marketed towards reducing cortisol, reducing stress, insomnia, better sleep, whatever it was. And literally nothing worked. I say air quote if you're watching the video, because they worked. They knocked me out. Went to bed pretty early, even as a college student, because I was personal training. And if you're familiar with personal training, you're usually up at the butt crack of dawn, which then I loved. I would take something to go to sleep, mainly medication, supplements. On the nights it was a drinking night, alcohol, but I would wake up, say I went to bed at 10:30, 11, or when I was training after college and I was only working in a gym and building my business, I went to bed at fucking 7:30 because I was just so like dead from the day. But I would wake up 4 hours later and be wired. And then it was that super fun game, which I'm sure you've played, where you're staring at the clock and you're like half, maybe you're like a third asleep, not even half. And you're like rustling in the sheets, trying to get comfortable. You can't tell if you need to get up or you need to stay in bed, you need to go lay on the floor. You probably try all of those things because I know I did. And then eventually it would be time to get up because I got, 5 a.m., 6 a.m. to get ready for class or to get ready for the gym or my own workout. And I was like, well, fuck, I like barely slept. I feel like the walking dead. And now I have to go live my day. That's where struggling to fall asleep, waking up in the middle of the night. And then at that point, I wasn't sleeping. So I was exhausted. Hormones took a shit, gut health was horrible. And those things definitely played into the poor sleep, which we'll get to. But the big thing that was like that I wish I knew was that nothing was wrong with me. Like I wasn't broken. This wasn't normal. That definitely wasn't normal. And there was a solution, right? So eventually I was fed up with all of this. I got to grad school and I was like, all right, I moved here. This is a new start. I really want to fix my sleep so I can actually be a person, achieve the things I wanted to achieve because I knew it was holding me back at a certain point. And I saw a doctor. And this doctor was actually really helpful. This was like the first good doctor that I had. I had a lot of bad experiences with doctors growing up. I honestly haven't talked about this in a really long time, but maybe I should. And this is unrelated to the podcast, but side tangent. When I was younger, at elementary school, mainly it started, you're just old enough to start to notice that your body is different from other people's. But then, really, in middle school and high school, I knew that I was chunkier than all my friends. I was chunkier than my mom. And I always thought she had such good genetics. Like, how did I end up like this? And comments were made in the household. My friends always seemed so careless and not nonchalant about their bodies or what they ate. And I always had a really big awareness of it from a young age. So that's where I remember in my adolescence, the doctors would be like, oh, you got to watch your weight. You got to watch your weight. And then eventually I like had a growth spurt. I started figure skating and I lost 10 plus pounds. And I don't even think I meant to at this point in my journey. I don't think I had really registered that I had control over it at that point. I was just like stubborn about it and upset. But then like I put my efforts into performance with skating and I didn't even think about my body as much, but I did lose weight because growing and also puberty and also just like being active for once. I wasn't a kid that played a lot of sports. I'm very unathletic. If you know me in person, you know that. Please don't invite me to play sports with you. I will watch, I will referee unless it's figure skating or hockey, then otherwise I'm pretty much out because I'm afraid of getting hit in the face with a ball. But anyway, I lost maybe like 10 pounds and I went to a new doctor because I was old enough. I was like 13, 14 and they didn't want me seeing my male family doctor anymore. And it was literally the worst experience fucking ever. But I'm proud of my like teenage self, how I handled this. So I go in and she's, oh yeah, you lost a lot of weight since the last time we saw you. And I don't even think I realized it at that point, like the scale, whatever. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I was young. I was really young. And she was like, what have you been doing differently? And I literally was just like, oh, I don't know. I started figure skating and we were talking about like food and how, I don't know, I was learning how to eat healthy through skating and stuff like that. I don't even remember what I said that cued her off, but she was like, okay, I'll be right back, whatever. And I overhear her in the hallway talking to another doctor right outside the room, which is so dumb. And she's okay, I think that this girl might have an eating disorder. She lost all this weight in such a short time, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. She seems weird about it. And I heard all of it. So I'm just sitting there, are you kidding me? What the hell? So she comes back in and she's just smiling with her clipboard. And I don't remember what she said, but I was like, I literally just heard everything that you just said outside that door. And she literally was just like shocked. And I was like, I don't have an eating disorder. Like literally, I don't. And I think at this point, I must have been older at this point because I remember knowing that I was going to go study nutrition. So maybe this was in college. I don't know. I'm very bad with remembering times that things happened. I don't know if that's an ADHD thing, but my fiance gets so mad. I digress. But I remember that as like a key memory, it must have been college. Sorry to confuse you guys. It must have been college. And I was either like, I'm literally studying nutrition. Like, I know I don't have an eating disorder or whatever it was. But I remember that being burning such a hole in me, where it being like, I don't trust doctors. I don't like doctors. They don't understand. And I knew that they didn't really understand nutrition. So I was like, why bother going to them? But when I went to this doctor in grad school, it was like literally the best first experience I've ever had. She literally just listened to me and asked me questions. I think I cried in the office because I was so fucking exhausted. I was like, I just need to sleep. I don't know what's wrong with me. And she's asking me all these questions. Now I know she was like screening me. Like, it was screening questions for anxiety, for depression, for all these things. And she's like, you have anxiety. I'm like, yo, no, I'm not anxious. I'm just fucking tired. I just need to get some sleep. I have insomnia. And she was like, yeah, you probably have that too, but it's driven by anxiety. So that's where I got my diagnosis of anxiety. And at the time, I was just like very turned off by it. But I was like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do if it means sleeping. So they prescribed me sedatives. They didn't work at all, literally at all, like hydroxyzine, things like that, which are basically just a very high dose of antihistamine. They didn't work. And then they put me on an SSRI, which honestly, I still take to this day. Everybody, I think, in the functional space is very like, oh, I want to stay off medication. I don't want to need this. And with a lot of things, I am for that. 100% for that. We should reactivate your body's systems so they can work on their own. But with mental health, that's out of my scope. But I do have a lot of friends, clients, and myself that are on medications for mental health. And I'm all for that kind of thing because I tried with supplements for years. So that was part of the puzzle, was figuring out, okay, part of it was my anxiety. But as I got deeper into studying nutrition and functional health, I realized the actual root cause outside of anxiety, because that's still true. Definitely more now that I've evolved with my mental health journey, realize that it's an ADHD thing that drives anxiety for me personally. But I don't struggle with my sleep anymore, is the moral of this story. I went from being diagnosed with anxiety and insomnia, sleeping maybe 4 to 5, if that, hours a night. And now I can sleep 8 to 9 hours without any additional medications or supplements. Yes, the SSRI helps with that, but I'm going to tell you why my sleep sucked to begin with, which might also be why your sleep sucks, what to do about it, and bring it full circle from there. So that's my backstory outside of the little bit of trauma that caused the sleep issues. And I'm curious if you relate to this, but I just remember those days I dreaded going to bed. I dreaded it. Freaking dreaded it. I wanted to stay up as long as I could or stay with people as long as I could because I didn't want to think about what would happen when I tried to go to sleep. It was just so traumatizing to night after night not be able to sleep or wonder, am I going to wake up? Am I going to get woken up? Is something going to happen? Am I going to feel like shit again tomorrow? Right. So if that's where you are, I feel you. I feel you more than I could ever express. Not sleeping is the fucking worst thing in the world. Excuse my language today. Hope no kids are listening to this. It is. It makes you feel like a psychopath. So let's talk about why you might not be sleeping well. First symptom situation that I'm going to go over root causes for is why you might be waking up wired in the middle of the night. Again, that's going to be different for everybody, but maybe it's 1, 2, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Maybe it's an hour before your alarm every night and you're just, bing, I'm up. Maybe you're struggling to fall asleep. These are often signs of an underlying imbalance in your body. When it comes to being wired in the middle of the night and waking up, it's an imbalance affecting your body's ability to stay in a restful state, right? And this was my main issue. The majority of the time, I could either knock myself out or I was so tired at the end of the day that I could fall asleep. But I would wake up wired. And some common imbalances, which I found out all of these things were true for the most part for me, are cortisol dysregulation. So this is an order of business number 1. This is the most common reason. Oh, thumbs up if you're watching the video. Most common reason why you might be struggling to either A, fall asleep, or more importantly, in this situation, B, stay asleep, or both, right? Or both. So we can think back. I gave myself as an example, but I want you to take a minute while I'm telling my story to think about yours. I can think back and list all the things in my life that caused my cortisol, my stress hormone, to be chronically high. Now, waking up in the middle of the night often can be related to cortisol spiking, but usually that is related to chronically high levels as a result of overactive HPA axis. So overproduction of cortisol throughout the entire day. So I mentioned a few to you, right? Not only was I overdoing caffeine, not only because I was tired, it was just like what you do in college, right? You walk by a coffee shop every couple hours. So I was drinking probably upwards, I say this and people don't believe me, probably just about under 1,000 milligrams per day of coffee, sometimes more. Coffee, energy drinks, different things like that. And I loved it. I love feeling overstimulated. Even still, I do. I really do. But I now know my body's limits. And that's something that we'll talk about, is knowing your limits with caffeine, not only just for like quantity, and you should understand how many milligrams you're consuming, like how many milligrams of coffee are in the cup that you brew for yourself every morning. Typically a brewed cup at home is around 80 to 90. But how, say you go to Starbucks or Dunkin' or whatever, and you get a big cold brew every day, that's 300 milligrams right there, right? So knowing how much caffeine is in the things that you're consuming, diet soda is another big one that will sneak up on you. So that was another one big thing for me, right? Chronic cortisol. I was also trying to do literally everything under the sun, everything. And I'm sure you've been there or are there now, where I was like, all right, I'm in college, I'm taking challenging science classes, trying to keep up, when naturally I learned differently, which I later learned with the whole ADHD thing. But that was something I really struggled with in college. Keeping up a social life, just in general, like going out on weekends with everybody, not being the nerd that stayed in, even though sometimes I was, right? And then also at that time, I was running clubs, I was figure skating, I always had a job or multiple jobs. So at that time, I was just spreading myself real thin, which I think, especially as women, we do that as we age anyway. And it's something that we all probably could work on together. And I'm personally working on in this phase of life, right? But I did a lot of things, from my caffeine to my overexerting my lifestyle, overexerting my training. I was lifting every day. Every day I was doing cardio. I was lifting because I wanted to be skinny. I wanted to be small. I wanted to be under a certain weight on the scale, which I learned, as much as achieving physique goals is great, they have to be sustainable ones, but that's a whole nother side tangent. So I was under eating. Those are the overeating, under eating, overtraining, occasional binge eating, alcohol, all these things are causing a lot of stress inside of me. Not to mention the havoc they wreak on the gut, which causes more stress. I was constipated. I didn't have a period. I was on birth control, all stressors, which can lead to chronic elevations of cortisol, right? So when we have that, it's going to be hard to sleep. It is. Even if you're doing everything right, if your cortisol is in that state, we just need to get it out of there, right? So that is one thing I wish I knew earlier, because my cortisol was in that chronically elevated state for, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many years. It's scary. It's probably like 5. And we'll get to what happened after, when we get to the feeling tired during the day. Another common thing with cortisol dysregulation could also be blood sugar. And this is something that I also experience. A lot of times, low blood sugar can trigger the release of cortisol and adrenaline. The goal of those is to get the body to be alert and produce fuel. So glycogen goes to glucose into the bloodstream, which can abruptly wake you up. That was another common one that I see a lot in clients who come to us, not optimizing their nutrition, right? So that's where one of the first things we see improve is sleep, because of these things. So you might be having that blood sugar drop in the night. You might be having some reactive hypoglycemia. And then also we have to also consider your eating habits throughout the day. Under eating is one of the biggest causes of poor sleep. It is. That this was a big one for me as well, because I did notice over the years my sleep got worse when I was trying to diet versus when I was just eating freely, which wasn't often in my younger days. But under eating or poor meal timing could be really impacting your sleep, causing you to wake up in the middle of the night. That's where I often recommend making sure that we eat something within at least a few hours of bedtime, because eating too early, meaning maybe you eat dinner at 4 and you're going to bed at 10, like your blood sugar is going to dip and it's going to need you to eat again. And most women don't eat enough calories. And I know nobody wants to hear you need to eat more calories, but you're like, I want to lose weight. And that's a whole nother tangent. But the moral of the story is, you're not going to lose weight if your sleep is fucked. You're not going to lose weight if you're not sleeping, and that's causing insulin resistance, and that's causing cortisol issues and gut issues, all of that stuff, right? So we'll talk about eating enough later, but that was a big piece of my story. I was chronically under eating, so my body was constantly in a fight or flight, stress state, sympathetic state, and looking for its next meal, right? I was food focused. I was always thinking about food. So when I was up in the middle of the night, that's part of what I was thinking of, all of that stuff. Another reason why you might be waking up wired in the middle of the night is GI issues. And again, this is mainly what we work with clients on, and it is really, really common. One of the main ones is going to be leaky gut or intestinal permeability. So when we have that leaky, permeable intestinal membrane here, meaning particles can pass through, and inflammation can occur, and immune system is going to be activated. If that is the case, especially at night while your body is trying to organize everything from the day, it can disrupt sleep, activating some of those stress pathways, the cortisol pathways that we spoke of before, the inflammation pathways. Another one is histamine overload. So certain bacteria or poor detoxification, liver issues can lead to histamine buildup. Another one is mold leads to histamine buildup, which is very stimulating and may peak at night. Parasites too. There's actually a full moon apparently around now while I'm recording this. And if you're having extra sleep troubles during this full moon, then it's likely parasites, because parasites are most active around a full moon. And they also cause histamine issues, which histamine can act as a neurotransmitter. And what that does is it plays a big role in our brain's alertness systems. High histamine activity in the brain, particularly at night, is going to make it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. Common triggers of this is things that cause increased histamine levels. People think high histamine diet, but typically the only time you react negatively to high histamine foods is if you have something else causing them to be an issue. So allergies, gut imbalances, hormone imbalances, which we'll get to. And that's where getting to the root cause of that is going to make a big difference. So that way your body can actually regulate the breakdown of histamines and help you sleep in the short term. If you do suspect this is an issue, meaning maybe you're also having itchy skin, skin rashes, seasonal allergies, stuffy nose, really heavy periods, headaches, migraines, things of that nature, you can try a low histamine diet and also reduce environmental triggers and things of that nature. If you need extra help, hit me up. But anyway, that's how the gut plays a role. And I know that those things were issues for me because I literally took Claritin, the over-the-counter allergy medication, or Zyrtec. I switched. I don't think it really mattered. Whatever one I could get my hands on for probably 10 years, because I was just like, everyone in my family has allergies. I have allergies. If I don't take this, my eyes are itchy. I'm stuffy all the time, XYZ. And my histamine overload not only impacted my ability to breathe normally and not itch my skin off, but it also impacted my sleep. And that was another part of my journey, fixing my gut and not needing histamine blockers or Claritin allergy medication, antihistamines for years now, right? Another thing is hormones. Everybody jumps to hormones. We already talked about cortisol. So let's talk about melatonin and cortisol. When cortisol remains high in the evening, it suppresses melatonin production, making it much harder to fall asleep, making it much harder to stay asleep, right? Another key hormone that regulates sleep is going to be progesterone. So low progesterone can reduce GABA, the calming neurotransmitter, which helps with sleep. Another big thing to remember is a lot of these things go hand in hand, right? If we're having low progesterone, we might also want to look at high estrogen. We might want to look at gut health and liver detox, because it's like, why are your hormones dysregulated, right? So it all does go hand in hand. And I know that this sounds scary. This is where getting a detailed assessment done by a professional would be really helpful, so you can navigate where some of your issues with sleep are coming from exactly. This is what we do in the first week or two of coaching. We do a detailed assessment of symptoms and history, so that way we can give them the tools that they need to focus on the biggest rock of the root causes. But those are the biggies when it comes to having trouble with sleep. And a big thing to note for us ladies is hormones are going to change throughout our menstrual cycle when we're ovulating. And we'll talk about perimenopause in a second. But typically, most of my girls who struggle with sleep struggle most in their luteal phase. And this was true for me during the time as well. So our follicular phase, days 1 through 14, estrogen levels are going to be a little bit higher. They're rising, which support serotonin and melatonin production. Serotonin helps with anxiety, and we already talked about how melatonin and cortisol have that inverse relationship. And we all know melatonin helps us sleep. Generally, we have better sleep around this time. Around ovulation, estrogen peaks, followed by a big drop, which may cause light disturbances with sleep in those of us that are sensitive. Phase though, like days 15 to 28, depending on the length of your cycle, is when progesterone rises. And this can have a sedative effect, right? Progesterone is known as more of our sleepy hormone. However, if there's an imbalance there, estrogen dominance or already low progesterone, this can lead to symptoms in that luteal phase like anxiety, like night sweats or fragmented sleep. Before our cycle starts, this is often when we struggle the most because both estrogen and progesterone drop, which can trigger those PMS symptoms, mood swings, bloating, anxiety, and sleep disruption. So that's where, you know, knowing what the cause is going to be really helpful. And then once we get into perimenopause, hormones are fluctuating and declining, both of them. So that's where we might see exacerbation of sleep issues from night sweats and hot flashes, increased anxiety, or the insomnia related to the hormonal instability, reducing deep and REM sleep, which it's one thing to sleep, but are we actually getting REM and deep? And this is where if you do have a fitness tracker like a Fitbit or an Oura Ring that tracks like the different stages of your sleep, that can be really helpful. I've had clients where we use that data to see improvements, and it correlated very well with how they felt during the day. If you're struggling with waking up in the middle of the night and feeling wired or having trouble falling asleep, the biggest things to focus on: number one, balance your blood sugar. Ensure that you're eating regularly throughout the day. A lot of people think that fasting is the best way to balance blood sugar, but if your body is stressed and that's why your blood sugar is wacky, that is the opposite of what you need. You need to eat a balanced meal, meaning contains protein, some healthy fats, and fiber, mainly coming from carbs, fruits, veggies, things of that nature, every few hours, right? Every 3 to 5 hours, especially dinner. We need to eat a very balanced dinner, one that's not too high in sugar or inflammatory foods before bed, right? We need to support hormonal balance. So if you're not sure where to start here, I would really focus on food choice. And then I'm going to give you a few basic supplements. Food choice wise, we want to focus on things that are rich in magnesium, zinc, and B vitamins. So this is where high quality meats and fish can come in handy. This is where things like dark chocolate and pumpkin seeds and different nuts can come in handy as well. And then you can even consider adaptogenic herbs. So I'll give you a few that are pretty general, but for the most part, when we're trying to manipulate cortisol, it is very individualized. So I'm not going to go and give you all the different supplements because I don't want you to fuck your cortisol up, because I've done that too. You can over supplement and force your cortisol in the wrong direction. So supplement carefully, get testing. That is the biggest thing. Get a Dutch test, get a saliva cortisol. Let me know if you need help with that. But consider things like ashwagandha or chaste tree berry to support your adrenals and hormone health. Ashwagandha is an adaptogenic herb, which not only is going to help the stress response, so help how you cope with stress mentally, physically, but it's not going to have a major effect on lowering or increasing cortisol necessarily. It's just going to help modulate it, so to speak. And then shea tree berry can help, or Vitex can help support low progesterone levels, right? I feel like there's very few women where that is not helpful for, unless you are already on like progesterone, HRT, or something of that nature. And then work on your environment and the routine that leads into bed. Everyone talks about routine, but I can't stress how important this is when it comes to fixing your sleep or your energy for the day. This is probably the biggest thing that made a difference for me once I like graduated college, stopped waking up at 4 in the morning to go personal train. And if you still do that, it's even more important that you do this now, because I didn't used to. But this is the biggest game changer, is having that wind down routine at the end of the day. If you work on your computer all day like me, have a cutoff. Have a cutoff, even on your phone. If you're someone that works for yourself, or you just are almost always on call, use an app. I use the app called App Block, or have do not disturb filters that block certain apps and messages at certain times, because at the end of the day, what matters most is that you sleep. I know we're all worried about, oh my God, I have to get everything done. But if you're working all night and expecting yourself to work the entire next day and be productive and not feel like ass, that's going to be really hard. So I have found that my cutoff, like the latest that I can be on my screens and still fall asleep and stay asleep, is 7:30. And I typically go to bed around 9, sometimes 10 on the weekends, but 7:30, 7:45 at the absolute latest. My app block on my phone, it turns on automatically. So if I try to open Instagram or Facebook or something else work related, Slack, WhatsApp, it's not going to open. It's not going to. I would have to disable the app, which sometimes I do, but I try not to do. And what that does too is it also places a boundary, right? Because as much as it's helpful to have our phones, we all know we over rely on them. We all know it, right? Have a boundary with that. Limit your blue light exposure in the evening. Get a pair of blue light blocking glasses, especially if you need to work late, or maybe you are in healthcare and you work the night shift. Get a pair of blue light, so the nights that you're on shift in the middle of the night, at least the harsh lights aren't as harsh. There is research to show that blue light blocking can help regulate those circadian rhythm hormones, so mainly melatonin. I got a pair for Ed for Christmas, and he always laughed at me in mine because I have the most obnoxious dark red filters on mine. And he's, you literally look like a druggie. And I'm like, whatever, they work. And I got him a pair, and he's, oh my God, I'm so much more tired now before bed. I'm like, because your melatonin production is happening. Let's go, right? And then also keep your bedroom cool. I am crazy about what I go to sleep in. If I'm uncomfortable in my clothes, this is probably an ADHD thing, or my blankets or anything, my hair, I will not sleep well. So I need to do all the things, get in the best PJs, tie my hair up in a knot, but do what you got to do and make sure that you're winding down. So again, cutoffs, have a big balanced blood sugar meal before bed. And then I mentioned ashwagandha already, chaste berry. Another big one that I would recommend for almost any women, again, check with your doctor, your practitioner, magnesium glycinate. This is a form of magnesium that is very highly absorbable, promotes relaxation, and can also support hormone production, progesterone. Outside of that, do other things to reduce stress, right? Things like yoga, deep breathing, manage your training schedule. You shouldn't be lifting every single day, right? Make sure you have rest days, learn how to listen to your body and give it what it needs, whether that's a little more food, whether that's a day off from training, whether that's a sauna session or a nap, right? Things like that. And that's where in our client check-ins every week, I ask my clients to share little wins from their week, whether it was a self-care win, a boundary that was set. And it's really cool to see like how much stronger they get in their ability to take care of themselves and others when they prioritize themselves first. Anyway, so that's my spiel on what I would do if I was still waking up in the middle of the night or struggling to fall asleep. And don't get me wrong, not every night is going to be perfect, right? Every once in a while, we all have a horrible night while we're staring at the ceiling. But when I literally tell you that I used to do this every single night, and now I don't, knock on wood, I don't remember the last time this happened, I need to scream from the rooftops. It is insane. Like, I can't even believe how horrible I felt. So let's go into the other side of the coin where we are feeling tired no matter how much we sleep, right? You are in bed, you're sleeping 7, 8, 9, I would say 8 to 9 hours is most ideal, but you're still not feeling well in the morning or throughout the day, I should say. I feel like sometimes we wake up and we're like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And then a few hours later, we're like, fuck, right? So that's where big things here, and I've been through this as well. What leads to this is often what we already talked about, right? A lot of times our cortisol is really high for a really long time, and then eventually the adrenal gland craps out and it's, I can't do this anymore. Like, I literally cannot maintain this output, this high of output, and everything crashes and our cortisol production gets low, which can lead to that like chronically exhausted period of life. That's how I felt for a really long time after all of my sleep issues, right? I got on the SSRIs. That did help a lot, but I still had to work really hard on my routines. But I was in grad school, so it was a little bit more manageable. I was living by myself. I could actually do the bedtime routine and learned how to eat enough calories. I worked with coaches to learn what my body could really handle from a caloric standpoint. I took time away from dieting, and my body actually changed a lot more during that time and focused a little bit more on life, right? Learning how to live life again without being constantly stressed. Cortisol dysregulation, again, that's going to be another big one here for being tired during the day. It's even with adequate sleep, chronic stress can dysregulate the HPA. Literally, it dysregulates everything, causing that fatigue during the day. And it's also, for years, for a lot of us, we overwork ourselves, we stress ourselves out, we burn ourselves out, and it can be hard to come back from that. So that's where understanding where your cortisol is at can be really validating. So you're not just, oh my God, this is my life now. No, your hormones are just tanked, but we can fix it. So in addition to cortisol, and again, a lot of this with fatigue goes hand in hand. Thyroid dysfunction is another reason. So hypothyroid or underactive thyroid can cause fatigue, even if you're doing all the right things. And symptoms outside of fatigue, cold sensitivity, weight changes, hair thinning are big ones that I hear a lot. Even subclinical issues, meaning borderline lab values, may contribute to feeling exhausted, even if, again, you're not full-blown hypothyroid or Hashimoto's. So that's where, again, getting a grasp on what's going on is really important. Other factors might be nutrient deficiencies. I feel like this is decently common, but not usually the big root cause. Blood sugar dysregulation can also cause fatigue if you're constantly spiking and having energy crashes. That's where we might get into, okay, I feel all right, but then I crash in the afternoon. That could be a blood sugar thing. A lot of times that's related to poor meal timing, so inconsistent eating patterns, maybe skimping out on carbohydrates, always trying to diet. Our blood sugar is just going to be a mess, or even just chronic stress. And then gut issues can also cause this level of fatigue, mainly related to imbalances in your gut microbiome. If you have bacterial overgrowth, if you have some sort of infection, if you're not absorbing your food properly because you're not creating enzymes, it's not allowing you to absorb nutrients. You need vitamins and minerals to do every process in your body, right? Every single process requires nutrients. And if you're not absorbing them, even if you're eating them, because I'm sure you are, your body is not going to be able to function well on its own, right? And then there's also, this is something that I see a lot and realize for myself, hidden infections or chronic illnesses. You'll hear the diagnosis, chronic fatigue syndrome, get thrown around a lot, but a lot of times there's a deeper root cause to even that diagnosis of a virus. So an Epstein-Barr, bacterial infections. So bacterial vaginosis, if you're constantly getting infections, we need to dig deeper and see what's wrong with going on with your immune system. Autoimmune conditions can manifest with fatigue when they're unmanaged or when they're constantly in flare-up states. Lyme disease, mold, different things of that nature. So that leads us into like toxic overload or poor detoxification. So sluggish liver, this was a big one for me for a long time. And other ways you can know if maybe your liver is congested, so to speak, really dry skin, maybe like dry patches on your skin. I used to get them on my fingers. Constipation, stool that's hard to pass. Stool might be greasy or there might be mucus in your stool, not always on that one. Pain on the right side of your rib cage, feeling like you have a really hard time like digesting certain foods, feeling yucky after a high fat meal, or feeling terrible after alcohol. Those are some big ones for liver congestion. And liver is one of the first things that we support, because if you're not pooping, then we're going to have a whole host of issues if we don't fix that. In addition to, if your detox systems aren't working properly, we can't do what we need to do, right? Hormones can also impact fatigue. Again, if you're having high estrogen and low progesterone. And then another big one that I think isn't talked about enough because it's overwhelming and it's what the hell do I do about this? But mitochondrial dysfunction can lead to fatigue. And this is very true for my girlies that have chronic infections like mold or Lyme disease, because your mitochondria are damaged. So mitochondria are the powerhouse of our cell, and dysfunction here majorly impacts energy production, like ATP type energy production, right? So this may stem from oxidative stress, gut issues, nutrient insufficiencies, because in order for your mitochondria to stay healthy and produce ATP from carbs, from fat, right, and a little tiny bit from protein, it requires certain cofactors and enzymes and nutrients. If we're having inflammation in the cell, your body isn't able to properly recycle the cells. Autophagy isn't occurring as much as it should. Other things to consider with sleep quality, if you're tired during the day, is like sleep apnea, or other things that I've seen impact REM and deep negatively are dysfunction of like low estrogen, low progesterone. So I've seen this in my ladies who are postpartum, obviously in my perimenopausal and menopausal women, in my girls who have been on birth control or have. So again, big thing here is going to be to either way, no matter where your sleep is at, if you're waking up really tired in the morning, again, that's more that low cortisol. A lot of things need attention there. And then if you're waking up in the middle of the night, wired, having trouble falling asleep, that's often like an overreaction, heightened cortisol, maybe heightened immune system, something of that nature. Big things to do. One, keep a log of your symptoms without driving yourself crazy. I always tell my girls this. We have a shared log that we keep together, so that way I can always look at their day to day and make notes and comments, but look at patterns like beyond just the fatigue. Because if all you think about is how tired you are, you're going to lose your shit. Have you looked at your digestion? Are you pooping every day? What does your poop look like? Look at the Bristol stool chart. Google that, Bristol stool chart, and start writing down what your shit looks like every day. And if you're not sure if it's normal, send me your shit list. Your shit list, that sounds funny. Are your menstrual cycles regular? How many days apart are they? How many days are you bleeding for? How many days are you down and out? Is your hair falling out? Is your skin really dry? Do you have a lot of food cravings? What other things can we look at? Where is weight? What is your energy? What is your stress? Stress is a big one. Stress alone can cause all of this. Stress alone. And I'm sure some of you can relate to this, where you're like, yeah, I struggle with all of these things when I'm stressed, or when I'm not, I can sleep, I'm fine. So that's where too, you can ask yourself, do I feel better when I go on vacation? Whether it's a staycation or not, do you feel better? Do you sleep more? Do you not wake up in the middle of the night, anxious, going over your to-do list in your head? So stress is a big part of it. Review symptoms, do an assessment with yourself, reach out to us if you want us to do an assessment on you. Consider testing thyroid function, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, inflammatory markers, cortisol. If most of your symptoms are gut dominant, that's where we might consider a GI map. And then continue tracking trends. This is another big one. Again, look to see what might be the root cause. Dive deeper, put the puzzle pieces together. And again, that's what we're here for. So that way we can put together a personalized protocol where we're focusing on addressing the root cause, not just like trying to whack-a-mole to symptoms. And that's through a lot of things. It's through tailored nutrition, stress management, and maybe supplementation too. So the big thing here is you're not broken. Nothing is wrong with you. I know I felt that way for years. I was like, this is just how I'm going to be. I'm going to be exhausted for the rest of my life. As I got older, I was like, how the fuck am I going to have kids? Like, I can barely take care of myself through the day. I'm so tired. And I can honestly say, being on the other side of that, it's like, it feels crazy to me that I even went through it now that it's been so long that my sleep has been sufficient. If you are in a place where you're like, oh my God, like I am always so exhausted, I don't know what to do, then that's where I encourage you to really dig deeper and keep advocating for yourself. So remember, sleep isn't just about getting through the night. It's about how you feel. It's about how it helps your body grow, how it recharges you. And if your sleep sucks, your body is telling you something deeper is going on. Make sure you listen to it. So if you like this episode, make sure you subscribe, share it with a friend who might need to hear it. And if any questions you have, seriously, I am always here to help. I love talking about this stuff. Shoot me a message on Instagram or an email. And thank you so much for hanging out with me today.